today I want to break down the difference between the rapture of the church and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So, got my notes here, got my Bible, and I'll break this down for you. You go to Matthew chapter 24. So, a lot of people say, oh, the rapture is after the Great Tribulation because it's said in the Bible. Well, we're going to read it. We're going to see if it's true. I'm going to test what these folks talking about. We're going to rightly divide the word too. So we'll say, Matthew 24:29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. Let's break this down. Verse 29 say, immediately after the tribulation of those days. What's those days? Talking about the Great Tribulation. Then it say, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. What's that? That's the day of the Lord. Then it say, verse 31, he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. People say, that's the rapture right there, because it's immediately after the tribulation. It's not. And I'm going to tell you why. In the Bible it say, don't nobody know the day or the hour, not even the angels, only the Father. The rapture is a separate event from the second coming. They're two completely different events. The rapture can happen at any moment. The second coming happened immediately after the tribulation. So if the rapture happened at any moment, by you saying the rapture is going to happen immediately after the tribulation, if you're going based off of verse 31, that's false, because you basically saying you know when the rapture is going to happen. But in the Bible it say don't nobody know the day or the hour. So that means the rapture and the second coming is two completely different events. Because people look at this verse and they say this is the rapture. But read it. And he shall send his angels which in heaven, with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from four winds, from one end of heaven to another. You got angels that's already in heaven, gathering people from heaven, bringing them back. So think about it. The rapture, we get snatched from the earth. In the second coming, we get brought back. That's why I say from heaven, from one end of heaven to another. So that's not the rapture. That's the second coming. Then the Great Tribulation, it begins when the 7-year peace treaty is signed. The whole thing with Israel. Because what it's saying about when people say peace and safety, that's when sudden destruction is going to come upon everybody. Because what it's saying in Matthew, as in the days of Noah, as in the days of Lot, people going to be eating, drinking, giving in marriage. Everybody going to have peace. But as soon as everybody got peace, that's when everybody going to be caught off guard. The rapture and the second coming again. Two completely different events. And I'm going to break down the difference between the rapture and the second coming. In the rapture, the believers meet Jesus in the air. Because it's saying in the Bible, Jesus, he going to descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. We're going to meet him in the air. In the second coming, Jesus returns to earth with his heavenly army. That's why I say in verse 31, the angels going to gather his elect from one end of heaven to another. They're not gathering them from the earth, they're gathering them from heaven. In the rapture, believers get a glorified body. They go to heaven. In the second coming, glorified believers, they come down from heaven to earth. In the rapture, God going to deliver his church from the time of tribulation, great tribulation. In the second coming, it's relief for the believers who endured the great tribulation. In the rapture, the church goes to heaven. In the second coming, Jesus comes down and he establishes his throne. And the rapture, again, it can happen at any moment. The second coming is immediately after the tribulation, immediately after the great tribulation. The church ain't mentioned in Revelation from chapter 4 all the way up until chapter 19. So from chapter 1 up to chapter 4, that's when you got John, who was exiled on the Isle of Patmos for the testimony of Jesus Christ. That's when Jesus showed him all the visions of what's going to happen in the great tribulation. Then on top of that, think about this. John was caught up. And right when he was caught up, the church wasn't mentioned after that till chapter 19. So that's a foreshadowing of the rapture, because John was caught up because he a believer in Jesus. Because the Bible said he was showing him the things hereafter that's going to happen after this. So after the rapture, he was showing him the things that's happening. Because you got to think, in chapters 1 through 4, Jesus was addressing the churches, telling them all what their flaws was. But after that, ain't no mention of the church. Only thing they talked about was 144,000, and 7 seals, 7 bowls, 7 trumpets, 7 judges, all that type of stuff. Again, nobody knows the day or the hour. But we know when the second coming is immediately after the Great Tribulation. Do we know when the Great Tribulation is going to start? Not exactly. But we know the rapture is right before the Great Tribulation. With this verse right here, you can break it down in two ways. I'm going to explain what I mean. People will say that the lightning that was mentioned in Matthew, they say that's the rapture. It could be that, but now that I'm looking at it, it can mean one or two things. It could be the rapture because, for example, it say wherever the eagle is, that's where the carcass is gathered. How the eagles catch their prey? They come down and swoop it up. That's what angels doing. They gonna when the rapture happens, the angels gonna come down and swoop